Hello and welcome to the Ship Shape Podcast, a series of podcasts where we meet amazing people and talk about their experiences, personal, technical, and all related to the maritime world. Come and dive in, dive in, dive in.
Today on the Ship Shape Podcast, we have Bob Denison, president of Denison Yacht Sales. Your two hosts today are Meryl Charette. I'm a live aboard on a Ta Shing Toshiba 36 in Boston, Massachusetts, and T.
Hey guys, welcome to the Ship Shape Podcast. This is Talha, and we have Meryl, and we have Bob Denison with us, and I am aboard my 40-foot powerboat in Virginia, and it's not as cold as Boston. Bob, where are you joining us from?
I'm here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where it's the kind of weather that would make both of you guys just sort of hate your lives a little bit because it's perfect. The skies are blue. It's like 60 degrees. And yeah, it's just one of those days you're really happy that you live in a town like this.
Nice. All right, that's the place to be. I know a couple of friends who escaped winter, probably somewhere in your neighborhood. I don't know if they're on boats, but they're also liveaboards. So yeah, thank you for joining us on the show, man. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Bob, you come from a legacy of being in the boating industry. Did you grow up on boats, and what type of boats did you actually grow up, boating on?
So we grew up mostly at the shipyard. My grandparents and then my uncles and my own parents built boats starting in the 40s, obviously way before I was around. So my earliest memories are in Fort Lauderdale, Dania Beach, and up in Saugatuck, Michigan, where our family had a yacht building plant called Broward Marine. But I spent a hell of a lot more time sort of like sweeping up screws and aluminum shavings and stuff like that more than I was on yachts. I was sort of in and around them. We did have a 46-foot Broward Sportfish that was a wood boat. That boat was called the Angler, and we were on that boat quite a bit. But yeah, it was more in the shipyard, less on the yachts.
That's cool. Do you have and this is like way back because it was a wooden boat, right? So what year are we talking? 80s?
So I was born in the late 70s. By that point, Broward had gone away from wood boat building, and they switched to aluminum in the 70s. So all the Browards that were built around the time that I was at the yard were built out of aluminum.
Nice. And do you have any sort of fond memories from back then, a day on the ocean that brought you back, or was this way down the line, you coming back to the family business completely unconnected?
Yeah, so I don't think I have ever really skipped a beat in my life or career where I wasn't somehow involved in the industry. I mean, at the earliest age, so like around the boatyard, anybody that grew up in a family business sort of environment might relate to the fact that we would spend our Saturdays just at the shop sweeping and doing random things. We would celebrate birthdays, and my dad would invite all of our friends out on a quick boat trip. And then when we get back for our birthday, he would have us clean up crap around the yard as a pretty good example of that. So it was a lot of I'm in the yachting industry, but it's not as cool as you probably think it is kind of stuff. But it was a growing up that I wouldn't trade for the world, especially now that that's what I, of course, do for a living. And it offered a really neat perspective, not only on the cool part of the yachting thing and the being on a yacht's awesome, but also just the people that help build the boats. And that's really what our industry, I think, needs to do a better job of, is less, Beyonce cracking a bottle of champagne in the Med somewhere with whoever the cool, pretty people are, but the people that built that boat really is what makes our industry what it is. And all that stuff, the economic impact of it. So for me, even now, when I look out at a yacht, it's hard not to just see the people behind it that make that thing possible.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting perspective. We've heard that from several of the people that we've interviewed in the past, where you look at a yacht and you just realize all of the components and people that were involved in actually creating it. Sure, you see the end of it where people are enjoying it and popping some champagne, but the amount of work that goes into one of these yachts is quite fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really, really important part of it. And again, I think it's our fault as an industry for not ringing that bell a little bit louder. But it's if you Google yacht photos or something like that. There's a lot of like TMZ stuff that'll come up, and it's salacious and it's fun and it's cool to see Leonardo DiCaprio hanging out with whoever his new girlfriend is in a bikini. It's just all that stuff is sort of like clickbaitish stuff. But the reality is, that boat that he's on, not only when it was being built, but as it's being maintained, is really about a hell of a lot more than Leonardo DiCaprio and his new girlfriend. It's about thousands and thousands and thousands of people and families that came together to make that thing possible.
So,
And how are you seeing things change? So you've been doing this now for decades. How has sort of technology stepped in every time and changed things up a bit?
I think technology, just like in any industry, it's technology as it makes life easier for the people using and having fun with the thing. In this case, it's a boat or a yacht, the better that thing becomes. And I think in our industry, safety and just accessibility are the two big things. So like, I think a lot of people don't get into yachting because they're a little intimidated. Like, how do I time that weird line that I can't remember? And I'm going to look like a jackass if I'm pulling into the marina or like a restaurant and everybody's looking at me. My palms will get sweaty. I don't want to deal with that. And you're just sort of embarrassed because there's a lot of that like unknown. And I think on the technology side, it's going to be, and it has become way easier to operate a boat. And even just like the comfortability part of it, there's a lot of people that want to be on a boat, but they get seasick. They're sort of embarrassed by that. Things like stabilization make being on a boat just way more fun. So I think technology is going to continue to make it a lot more accessible. And we have 4 little kids, and I really believe this. When they're in high school, they're going to be able to take their girlfriend or boyfriend out on a date, press a button, and the thing will dock itself, which again opens up this boating experience to a lot more people that don't want to be scared of that kind of scenario.
What about the flip side? Because like, for example, nowadays everybody's afraid that, oh, AI is going to steal all the jobs. What, like, you guys have been long enough. How has technology previously stolen jobs?
Yeah, I mean, I think and any part of that. So when we were building Broward's, there was it used to be all handmade. And of course, you have the weld torches, which still, of course, play an important part, or even a wood boat. But in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and even now, there are advancements in making the cuts of aluminum more precise, more efficient, which is ultimately at some point going to result in less jobs for that part of the boat being built. But in other ways, technology introduces itself where it's going to introduce new jobs, whether it's electronics or different parts of the boat where you're going to need people to install things that didn't exist on a boat before. So I think nowadays you actually have more hours going into a boat. So you have more jobs as a result. But the net result is more hours. But in certain parts of it, it's less. In terms of, I do think at some point there will be a robot kind of operating a boat. But you're still going to want the human service. You're not going to want a robot coming out and giving you a plate of really good ceviche or whatever. It's that human touch. I think part of it will remain, but I think you will see on the operations side parts of that taken over by AI in the next 20, 30 years.
And somebody's going to build them, right? So that's a job.
Yep, exactly. And at the end of the day, I think that AI, whatever you want to call it, captain experience, it'll only happen if it's better and safer. And when that occurs, it'll be a no-brainer for that to happen.
Getting back to your personal life, it seems like you grew up in the boatyard, right? Shipyard, and then you went to school, and then you got into the aerospace industry and healthcare. What was that like? And then tell us about the experience of coming back into Marine.
Yeah, I graduated. So I graduated college in 1999 from the University of Miami. I have to plug them because if you're a football fan, we need all the plugging we can get right now. But I graduated from UM that year. My grandfather sold Broward Marine, which I sort of thought my entire life growing up that would be the thing I step into, and he sold it. A few months later, I graduated and I needed to go find a job. And I worked for an internet company that happened to be in the healthcare space, and then an aviation company right in like the early 2000s. So 1999, 2000, 2001. And it was an awesome experience. That was sort of on the forefront of the internet, changing a bunch of stuff. And then back then, right there in 2001, my parents pulled me aside in only a way they could, and basically passive aggressively kind of like manipulated me into jumping back in. And I think they did the right thing in doing that, as much as I'd like to make fun of them nowadays for sort of pseudo manipulating me into it. But they put some pressure on me. They said, hey, this is what we do. This is who we are. And we really hope you'll come back in. And I did, of course. But it was about 2 years where I got to gain experiences in different industries that certainly helped out a lot here.
I love that. So you saw the light. But so
Yeah.
tell me more about, you brought up, for example, the internet in there, right? And again, and your business has been around way before the internet. It's, before the phone lines, even before computers even, right? And now we have the internet and we have stuff like that. How, over the years, but especially now, how do you guys still find like buyers for some of these super luxury yachts?
Well, two ways. I mean, the primary way is just word of mouth. And when you take really good care of people, whether you're a good marketer or decent at understanding how the internet affects things, at the end of the day, you take awesome care of people, you're going to very likely get those people that you take great care of, them to tell their friends about you and people on the dock. And that is our primary kind of, I don't know what you'd call that, our primary lead source, I guess. And we're lucky enough to have a lot of good brokers that do that well. And then the other part of it is our primary lead service or source is the internet. And our philosophy from the very beginning was to make things really simple and easy for people. So we sort of embraced that UI UX thing really early on. And even today, when you go on our site, it's probably a little pedestrian. It looks a little bit, not on the forefront of design, but we really cater to our core client, who's going to be a family, a man or a woman in his 50s, 60s, or 70s that wants to very easily shop things on or search things on our site. So that's sort of the core of what we do, is to keep it really simple and not in any way intimidating people that are a little bit older than us to go find a boat or a yacht.
You guys are almost like the one-stop shop. If you guys are, if someone's looking to buy a boat, right? You have financing, you have charters if you want it, used boats, new boats. How does that factor into the overall business model of Denison?
Yeah, it's really important to us. We of course started just on the brokerage sales front after my grandparents sold Broward, and then what ends up happening when you start a business like this is you end up referring, let's say it's yacht charter or cruise services or financing, insurance to other places, and most of the time it's a pretty good experience. Sometimes it's not, and the bigger you get, and the stronger you sort of become, like obsessed with, like we are, of making sure the client experience is a good one. So we want to control that. And it sounds like a weird word, control, like we want to control our clients. But to make sure and guarantee that the people here are all working together to provide a good experience throughout like the whole buying or ownership process is important to us. And yeah, that's critical. And so our newest division, which was started 4 or 5 years ago, is yacht management, and that whole thing is just about making sure people with the bigger yachts can own a boat and provide sort of just an easy, good, safe ownership experience throughout, with all the boring stuff like the flagging and crew issues and shipyard periods and things that go into that.
During the process of selling the boat, and then after it's sold, how do you maintain contact with your clients? Because obviously, if we're talking about word of mouth, you have to have some type of amazing customer service.
Yeah, we do a pretty good job there. So like during the selling process, and we talk about it a lot here, like when somebody decides to allow you as a yacht broker to sell their boat, you're giving that firm and that broker a pretty good chunk of money there, and we need to earn it. And a lot of times I think a yacht broker, even as good as they are, sometimes there's not much to talk about until there's an offer. So one of the things that we developed as an example is an owner's dashboard. So you can see in real time the email marketing we're doing, the social media marketing we're doing. We do a lot of video stuff, and you can log in and really get access to all the stuff behind the scenes, and then immediately be able to talk to your broker about it. So communication's a big part of it. And sometimes brokers don't have anything to talk about. Let's say you were to sell your boat and there's not much activity. The broker calls you up and says, hey, just wanted to let you know we're working hard. See you later. But that dashboard gives sort of like data and meat to that conversation. So those are the ways that we try to be transparent about what we're doing and give our brokers a really good reason to call somebody up and say, well, we haven't had an offer yet. We're working like hell. And here's an example of what we're doing.
We asked Ken Clinton, the owner of Intrepid Powerboats, the same question here. So you started from the floor and now you're president.
Mm-hmm.
How, and obviously through all those different experiences, you've met a diverse group of people. Can you give us any tips on communication skills in the industry?
Yeah. By the way, I'm a big fanboy of Ken. I think he's awesome, and I'm very proud of my beard. But I traded in any day for just for a few minutes on that guy's mustache. But the communication part of it's really important. I think one of the most important communication themes is to have hard conversations in real life. And I think that too often, and this isn't specific to yachting, of course, this could be anything, but I think too often it's easy to hide behind an email or a text when you have to deliver hard news, whether it's to a client or another broker, or even to your spouse, or I don't know. And I think that's one of the things we've been talking about lately as a company is when you have to have a hard conversation, pick up the phone and talk to the person or go meet them in real life. And I think oftentimes our industry does a bad job, first of all, even getting back to people when there's bad news. And then secondly, delivering the bad news in a weak, hide behind an email kind of a way. And I think that that's a big way that we could do a better job as an industry. And I think you'll see more of that happening.
So Bob, tell us a little more about, you do all of this on a global scale. Tell us a little bit more about that. Is it like more US based, or like, is it well spread out? You know, what sort of, is it different target markets in different regions? You know, has the demand always existed worldwide, or is that like a new endeavor?
Yeah, I think that's one of the unique things about our industry is boats, of course, move around quite a bit. And you could be in Boston one day and Newport the next, and you can go to a different harbor every week if you want to. So we very much consider ourselves not only a national but international company. We do have an office in Monaco, which is the place you'd want to be on the big boat side of things in Europe. And that activity on the sales and charter front is really taking off. And then here in the US, we have 21 offices. Every one of them, except only for one, is attached to a marina or a shipyard up and down the east and west coast of the US. And for us, it's really important to be there physically. And we see it, especially with the smaller brokerage market, and even with the bigger, there's a lot of movement with the boats seasonally. So it's important for us to have a local, peoples and a local office and all of those places.
One of the things that we always hear in the industry is the issues with bringing youth into it. Can you speak on that subject?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's an issue, but I think it can be a distracting issue for some companies that can become, and there's some marketing people that become obsessed with reaching out to millennials, reaching out to Gen Xers, or sorry, I'm a Gen Xer, reaching out to Gen Zers. And you can, and I think it's really, really freaking important. But I think there's still an underserved market in the Gen Xers and the boomers that haven't been made aware of how safe and boating has become compared to when it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So I think it's really, really important. And I think as industry, we need to do it, but we also can't take our eye off the ball and making sure that our core customer is looked after. My favorite thing about Gen Xers and millennials getting into the industry, I think, is the shared consumption model, which is like boat clubs, of course, and charter companies and day boating and stuff like that. I think is really where we're going to get that younger guy or gal into boating. And I'd love to see much more of that and many more clubs pop up. But I think that'll happen. And I think you're going to see a continued growth of younger boaters coming into the market. They just might not own a boat. They may charter it or join a boat club, which is just fine.
it is a gateway boat, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so
Totally.
Bob,
And it's
tell
just,
us.
it doesn't matter what kind of freaking boat you're on. When you just get out on a boat, like it's just less likely you look at your cell phone, for instance. And I don't, if it's a rowboat or a canoe or a little bow rider, it doesn't matter. And I think once you get that, and once you're like, oh man, this is a place I can interact with the people I'm with in a deeper, cooler way, and the environment around me, like it will hook you for life, and you'll continue very likely to climb in terms of boat size and all that stuff. So yeah, I think just getting people out on the water is the best first step.
This show was sponsored by
MITA, the Marine Industry Digital Agency. We know a lot about the marine industry, whether it be service, sales, repairs, we have it covered. Right. How are we going to help you? Easy. We are MITA, the Marine Industry Digital Agency. Our marine knowledge, whether it's basic web development, adding video, sprucing up that tired website, new feature or app created for your customers' phones, we have it covered. Traditional marketing, advertising, or PR companies don't know anything about the marine industry, but we do. Check us out at www.mida.pro or drop us an email at info@mida.pro. Let's discuss how we can improve your brand, increase your sales, and take you to that next level.
Welcome back to the Ship Shape Podcast.
I agree. So tell us, Bob, what does like a day in the life of a boat broker look like, a yacht broker?
So it's a hell of a lot less exciting than you think it would be. There's a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of behind the laptop stuff. There are some pretty cool perks, of course, when you get to go out and just be on the docks and get on a boat and go out for a sea trial or go meet a client at a really neat destination. But it's a lot of CRM, customer management software stuff, following up, even just like the boring things, like just calling up I just got off the phone about 20 minutes ago with an owner of a boat that was having a hard time, and he's a good client of ours. And I'm calling people up at engine places, trying to advocate for them to respond a little bit quicker. It's all that. At the end of the day, while it's less exciting, it's really rewarding because it sounds like a yacht broker. It sounds like sort of this waspy, and it is, I guess, for the most part. Most yacht brokers are older white guys that wear yellow pants, but there are parts of it that are unbelievably meaningful because you're truly like engaging with a family in a totally different way. And I really believe this. When you own a boat and your family is out in the water, I'm gonna sound a little cheesy here, but you do enrich their lives and you make that experience better. It really is a life enriching thing to do for a living.
Agreed. And then you mentioned something crucial there. It's sort of what got Meryl and I to start Ship Shape at all. But how do you guys deal with the repair side of things and the service side of things once somebody's bought the boat? And you mentioned you're calling people up and you're trying to make things happen. What is the state of that industry in your mind? And how you guys said you like to control the whole experience. How are you guys controlling that?
Well, we're controlling it only for a segment of our so we have a new boat part of our company where we do warranty and commissioning and that kind of thing. But we don't do a lot of the kind of retail brokerage, like after like a boat that's 10 years old, taking care of helping that. But we are working mostly with third parties. I think that part of our industry sucks a lot. And there are other ways that it's awesome. It just depends a lot of things on geography, on the type of thing you need fixed. But I have many friends in that part of the industry. They're all very well intentioned and good people. But a lot of times it could be a very small operation. There's not good systems or processes in place. And you forget to call people back. You forget to order the part. You just are constantly battling with big time demand and not a lot of supply on the human talent side. And it's a struggle, but it sucks, man. It's a really tough part of our industry, but there's some people doing it really well. And again, a lot of it is based on geography and a lot of it's based on time of the year. But it can be really, really frustrating. And that's probably there's a few things that keep me up at night. That's one of them long term is I hope one day I get to manipulate my own children to get into the industry. I think that we really need to step it up there.
Merrill, was that crazy stat we have on how many boat service providers for every boat?
Well, if you exaggerate how many service providers there could possibly be, and then you look at how many boats are actually registered, it's one marine business, whether it's a small mom and pop shop to one of those giant marine maxes, there's 175 boats. So there's a huge problem when it comes to service.
Huge
But
gap,
the
yeah.
MRAA last year, they came up with some statistic where it was like, God forbid, if you needed some service, it would take, if you needed a part, it would take them 30 days to just order the part. And then it was like 30 days to work on it. So that's bam, huge chunk of the season. But, we'll see how it all changes. I've seen a lot of younger companies enter in the space that are trying to become bigger. You certainly have like the old guard of marine repair and refit that are so busy with the work that they have now that they're like, oh, we don't need anything else, which certainly messes the customer experience for the boat owner. But yeah, it's going to be a journey for all of us. So here's a question, right? Talking to people in the superyacht industry has changed in the size of boats and the amount of boats that are actually being put out there. How do you see the future of the superyacht industry headed? Like, where is it going over the next 10 years?
There's a lot of conversations. I shouldn't even say that. There's a lot of conversations years ago that have led to real things happening in real life in terms of boats embracing greener technology on the superyacht side, which I think is great. And those builders and designers and owners aren't doing it just to sort of look like they give a damn about that, but they really, really do give a damn about that. So I'm very much encouraged at that. And I'm not even talking about propulsion and emission stuff, but just even the use of plastic cups on board and things that are just widespread for years on board boats have been just really stupid things to do for the environment. Like that, all that stuff's being cleaned up, and I love it. In terms of demand, massive demand. With not as on the supply side again, it's hard for the shipyards to keep up. So you're seeing a lot of these shipyards in Europe that have backlogs of years and years and years and years. So on that side of things, our industry is looking pretty healthy. But again, it goes back to the human part of it. One of the struggles we're having is the captain and crew part of it, where there's not enough people to service these boats, which becomes an issue. So, and that trickles down, and that's going to mean really nice family here in, let's say, Fort Lauderdale wants to hire a captain and a few crew are not going to have a lot to choose from. So it's going to get more expensive for them to hire crew, and they may get service that's not great as a result of just paying too much for somebody not quite as experienced, and that may push people out of the industry. But overall, it's really healthy. It's mostly just the people stuff that we need to get our arms around.
Mm-hmm. And then I remember working on a real estate client's website 5 years ago. And back then it was like $1 million properties were selling for, at the end, they'd be like, Bitcoin or Ethereum accepted. How is that and this is again 5 years ago, how is that in the yachting industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's here, and it doesn't matter so much of the value of Bitcoin today or tomorrow. It's just guys like my dad or women like my mom, and just the more people that are out there 5 years ago would roll their eyes at a conversation with Bitcoin. Perhaps they might own some themselves and are more comfortable talking about it and using it. And we're continuing to see a real growing demand there. We just closed on our 13th. Actually, it might be 14th now, I need to check, but it's a little more than a dozen transactions using crypto, charter and sales. And we've had 3 of them over $10 million. And I don't think that's going to let up. And again, it has less to do with the price of Bitcoin today and more to do with how comfortable boomers are in using it, or Gen Xers. And I don't think that side of the buying process is going to go anywhere.
Previous years, you guys were the #1 in boat sales. How many boats have you sold in totality? You have any like range of numbers?
Yeah, I hate answering that question because it just sounds so obnoxious when I'm like, we're the biggest or the best, we're amazing, but we are. I'm just kidding. But we do, it's hard to measure that stuff because unlike real estate or automotive, our industry doesn't keep track of those stats as well as they do. But Boat International keeps track of all super yacht sales or sales over 80 feet, where we just concluded our 4th year in a row where we were responsible for the most transactions there. But we do a lot of smaller boats. So we the last 3 years we've sold about 3,000 boats and yachts, and
Nice.
obviously that's just the very literally the people behind the wall on the marketing, closing, admin side, just and of course the sales side. They just work their butts off to make sure that while it's a big number, I want to make sure, and we as leaders here want to make sure every single one of those 3,000 something people had a great experience. If they didn't, I don't care how much where we were on the rankings, we screwed up. So that's important to us. It's not like the big number, but just making sure that guy last Tuesday when he closed on his boat felt really good about it, and he had an awesome experience.
Yeah, and again, one of our crazy stats was something like one was about a year. Is that if somebody managed to make a season, yeah, they were sort of in it for 4 years, and then that 4-year stat was that if a person made it to 4 years, then they were basically hooked for life. Then they do a second boat, a third boat, or whatever. Yeah, and it's interesting how just inviting the ocean is in that way. Once you actually get involved, like you said, the kayak could even make you feel that way, right? So exciting
No,
to have
totally.
that growing.
It's
Yeah. Go on.
for
Sorry.
sure. But I was just going to say, but it all kind of ties back into the post-sale. When your air conditioner isn't working, I don't care how cool your boat is, when it's 90 something degrees here in Fort Lauderdale, you really, really want to make sure that you get that thing fixed. And if that side of our industry is broken, it kind of screws up everything else. So that's where I think one of the big opportunities lives.
So you've
sure.
sold so many of these boats. Is there one story in particular where you were like, this was the greatest boat I've sold?
No, I mean, there's a few stories that stick out for me, and this is and I haven't been responsible for selling anything for a pretty long time, just because I'm busy doing this stuff and running a business. But one of my favorite boat buying experiences was a couple from Canada, and they came down, and of course, when you're selling somebody something like this, you really get to know the people, and they came down to buy a boat. And as it turned out, over lunch, I found out that the gentleman had terminal stage 4 cancer, and it was his life's dream to live on a boat and do the Great Loop. And he married his childhood sweetheart, and they had never been in a place financially where they were able to do that until very recently. And he came down, and of course they became friends, and that process of finding the right boat for them, and then the process of helping them kind of make some really, really neat trips together, and to see a couple like that live out this childhood fantasy during the latter stage of their life was unbelievably important, and sticks with me today. And I remind our brokers of that a lot, because that was a very small boat, but it was a major, major deal to that husband and that wife. And that's sort of the magic of what we do. And again, I said it sounded cheesy, but like that enriching part of people's lives is really important. And it has less to do with the size of it and more to do with this guy was able to like tap into that 11-year-old version of himself that got really excited and giddy around a boat, and he got to live out that dream.
Dude, that was a complete tearjerker. I love it. We should make a movie out of that one. Yeah.
But that happens a lot, and it's neat. And I think that's part about the boating magic I talked about. It is an easy place to put down your cell phone, but it's also an easy place, being on a boat, to feel like a kid again.
Yep.
And I think you have a lot of that happening with grandparents wanting to relive that part of their lives with their grandchildren. And that's just sort of the magic of being on the water,
True that. Nice. Okay, so maybe then just like as we start closing things off, you can give us some tips if somebody wanted to get into like the brokerage business. What are some of the avenues he should explore, or certifications he needs or she needs?
Yeah, so I think I would say, and I'm glad you said she, because I think our industry on the brokerage side really needs more men and women of color, and more women especially. We are such a white dominated industry, and it's okay. I mean, there's nothing inherently like, it's not like we tried to do that as an industry, or we were in some way conspiring against, but it's really refreshing. And there's a lot of men of color and women that are coming into our industry. I think it's an awesome thing. And so I would say, if you are not white, jump into it regardless if you have interest. And if you're not a man, jump freaking into it, because we need you. And great ways to do that are, I mean, there's a few avenues. One of them is the crew front, where you just get on board a boat and you learn the yachting industry by serving, which I think is unbelievably important, because the best people in sales or service have a very service-minded outlook on their work life. Is a great one. And then also just anything on the, I believe we have a lot to learn from on the real estate side, and the process of buying or selling a house is extremely similar to buying or selling a yacht. So we've had some success with some realtors that have switched over, but it's just that, like, learning how to serve people really well, no matter what you look like or how old you are. You do that, and you know boats, and you can really help people with the process of it. It's not just a product model. What the hell is that word? Product knowledge. It's also the process knowledge, and knowing the right steps of buying or selling a boat, and also the right people to refer to make sure that your experience is a good one. But we need you. Our industry needs you, not just on the sales side, but on the turning the rent side. There's a lot of ways to make an awesome living in the boating and yachting world, and I hope more people do it.
Woo. Well, looking at you over Zoom here, you look like a young guy. Where do you see Denison going, by the time you're a old man and your sons are taking this over?
Yeah, so we just got acquired, and I'm third generation, which is a weird thing to say, because it's sort of a mixed thing there. But we just got acquired by the good people at One Water, who have been freaking awesome. And I mentioned that because there's a lot of things that we as a company want to do in terms of growing and getting into new markets. And the One Water, and it's not just, they're publicly traded, so they're financially really sound and all that stuff, but there's also just really good people with a different perspective. So I think it's sort of revitalized. I'm in my 40s, but I've been doing it my entire life. It sort of revitalized my energy and love for this industry. And I think I was just talking to my wife the other day. I would love to see our boy or one of my 3 girls jump into it, and I think they will. But for us, it's going to be just about making sure that they're in it and around it the right way, and they understand that it's not about the champagne, and it's not about looking cool on the back of a yacht with Leonardo DiCaprio. Although, by the way, that would be awesome. But it's just more about serving the everyday person and making sure that they know, our kids know, that decision to buy a boat is a really, really, really big deal for that family, and to sacrifice for them, and to understand that it's a big moment, and to take it really seriously.
So Bob, so you might have just answered this, but like, how do you make a family business survive like multiple decades?
I think my grandparents did this well, and then my parents did, of course, and uncles, and I hope I am. But they really understood that, like, that word sacrifice. And I think it's easy to say, and everybody has like, client experience is really important to me, so we're going to figure out how to make it happen. But at the root of it, it's sacrifice, and it's about inconveniencing yourself so that somebody else can have a good experience. And so for a yacht broker, that might mean waking up really, really early to pick up somebody from the airport, or showing up to the boat way ahead of time, making sure that it's looking good. And it's just all those really annoying, hard parts of life, but doing that consistently with the right attitude. And so for them, for boat building, it was the same thing. They were constantly sacrificing themselves for their employees, and of course their clients, and really making sure that they were aware of. And so as a good example, when they inconvenience themselves and sacrifice their time or their money for their employees, it really resulted in the employees being ready and willing to do the same thing for clients. And for us, I think generationally, that's a really important thing, is just to make sure that we're willing to suffer for a good client experience. That sounds
suffer,
kind of dark, I guess, but I think it's important. Yeah. Suffer, you must. Yeah. So that's what we're teaching our 4-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I think it's got that element of sort of service attached to it. And one thing I think I caught in there basically was sort of attention to detail. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I think I didn't say that, so that must be something you were wanting me to talk about, which I am cool with. I
Yeah.
think attention to detail is unbelievably important, not just from like the website UI UX thing, but also we're talking big numbers. Even on the smaller boats, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and to make sure that I's are crossed and T's are wait, how does that go? I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and making sure that you're looking out for the client with, again, all the boring details is unbelievably important. And that's all the stuff we learned in the 5th grade, right? Like proofreading, double checking stuff, and that attention to detail stuff on board. If you're a captain or crew, or if you're fixing an air conditioner, that stuff is so important.
So Bob, where can people find you and, check out the yachts that you guys have for sale and charters and all of that?
So we are online at denisonyachting.com, and then we are at pretty much every big boat show. And I made fun of yacht brokers a few minutes ago about wearing yellow pants, but you will probably find me wearing yellow pants at these boat shows. And we really love meeting new people. So it doesn't matter if you're a client or not. We just love it. And I think that's one of the annoying parts of the super yacht industry in particular, is there's a little too much pretense. And like, are you even allowed to go in there at that display? And we really, here at Denison, want to make sure that people feel really welcome to get not only an honored display and talk to us, but also get on board some of the bigger boats. So if you're at a boat show like that and you want to go see some cool boats, please come see us, because it's really important to us that you feel extremely welcome to do that.
Yeah, it'll be the big orange banners with Dennis Yachting on it.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Well, it was a great episode. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you guys so much for thinking of me, and I admire what you guys do. And it was a big deal for me to talk to you guys. So thank you.
Oh, appreciate it, Bob. Thank you so much. Stay in touch, and hopefully, we'll discuss more adventures, soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Check back every Tuesday for our latest episode, and be sure to like, share and subscribe to shipshape.pro.